welcome back to my YouTube channel. Just a quick one from me to preview Newcastle's trip to AC Milan in the Champions League tomorrow night. We're about 22 hours away from kickoff at the time of recording, and it's a really, really exciting time. It's all sinking in again, and back at the San Siro as well, which is sort of poetic because the last away game Newcastle played in the Champions League 20 years ago was at the San Siro. 2-2 draw with Inter. This is AC Milan, though, different and a completely different proposition. I think actually on paper Newcastle should feel a lot more confident of a victory in this game than they did 20 years ago against Inter. The context of that game was that Newcastle really needed a victory to keep their realistic hopes alive of qualifying for the knockout stages of the second group phase, as it was back in 2002-03. A 2-2 draw at San Siro did take it to the final day, and then a defeat to Barcelona ended the hopes under Sir Bobby Robson. I got a piece on this BBC Sport website to build up to the game on Tuesday, which basically reflects the sort of mood around the club with the fan base and the players. There was a sort of sense of, let's see where we go, and this is a stage that Newcastle wanted to prove themselves on, but there was no real expectation. AC Milan are a transitional team, 10 new signings this summer. A lot of quality there, but there's a transitional sense, and obviously the confidence is very low from that derby defeat to Inter the weekend, 5-1 as well. So there's, Ibrahimovic returned to the Milanello training base on Monday to rally the troops effectively, and Newcastle go into that game full of confidence after that victory against Brentford. Sort of relieved the pressure on Eddie Howe, if it was external or I don't think there's any real pressure from the Newcastle end, but the sort of talk around Eddie Howe's situation and that he needed that victory, he got it. Newcastle can go into this game and sort of really enjoy it, but they can have a good go at it. Sandro Tonali will probably play. He's speaking to the press over in Milan tonight. On his first return to the San Siro, he'll start, I think. Alexander Isak will come back in to lead the line up front. I think Miguel Almiron will probably start on the right, Anthony Gordon going over to the left. It's more likely than Harvey Barnes keeping his place. And as I say, Kieran Trippier, Sven Botman will play on a ground that he may well have been playing for AC Milan tonight. Obviously, there was a real rivalry for his signature just over a year ago. So, Newcastle, this isn't like the Inter game 20 years ago where Newcastle were massive underdogs. They weren't used to that sort of stage. There was a lot of inexperienced players at that level, and I spoke to two of them, Steve Caldwell and Andy Griffin, for this piece, and both of them sort of said that it was about the occasion and the atmosphere. The 12,000 Geordies was what people remember at that point. But this time, it's not going to be about the atmosphere. It's going to be about the match, and there's an opportunity, as I've mentioned, for Newcastle to really stake a claim in this group if they can get a good result. And a victory is not too far out of the question for Newcastle by any stretch. They've got the quality, and I've long said that Newcastle have got a Champions League spine. If you look at Botman, Bruno Guimaraes, Sandro Tonali now, and Alexander Isak, and then you've got Trippier as well. There's players that most Champions League teams would if they played for most teams in the world, people wouldn't really bat an eyelid. Then you've got the likes of Dan Burn, Sean Longstaff, Fabian Schär perhaps, who fit around that and play to the best of their ability. And what's really interesting about the makeup of the Newcastle squad, and I think why it'll work in the Champions League, is because people like Sean Longstaff have openly said that playing alongside Bruno Guimaraes and the likes of those players and Trippier and that type of player really enhances their game. And I think Newcastle, they shouldn't fear anything going to the San Siro. I think AC Milan have got a bit of trepidation about them. I do genuinely believe that Stefano Pioli, the manager, is already under a little bit of pressure. Isn't quite at the sort of level where he's got a fear for his job, but a bad result here, and the pressure will turn. And the press over in Italy are not very forgiving of that sort of situation. Newcastle are not a big player for the Italian media and general fans in Italy. There will be a bit of an unknown quantity, a bit more known now, obviously with Tonali going there, but they're a bit of an unknown quantity in Newcastle, so there won't be too much expectation of them. But Newcastle can really hurt Milan in midfield through Tonali, through Bruno and Longstaff. That's going to be a really, really interesting midfield lineup, as I expect it, because you've got Longstaff doing what he did for Bruno on Saturday night, and Tonali can that bring the best out of that sort of dovetailing between Tonali and Bruno, which we saw admittedly against Aston Villa on the opening day. It's not really worked out since then too well, but generally I think Newcastle have got a really good chance here. This is not the same as 20 years ago. There's all the talk and all the emotion and all the memories and the nostalgia of that game, but really that game was really remembered for the 12,000 Newcastle fans and the real takeover of Milan, that trip, and how it was just as big celebration of Newcastle's growth into that competition, that they'd already made their history, they'd already gone as far as they really expected to, further in fact. Whereas this is a team on the beginning of something quite serious, and I think a victory at AC Milan, a team that are not in their best shape at the moment and are there for the taking, is not too far out the realms of possibility, but would also be a massive statement. And I think it's very, very possible that Newcastle can get that. So it's just a quick one from me, just to really preview the game after the quick turnaround. Obviously, I was only here yesterday reviewing Brentford. I'll be at Bramall Lane on Sunday as well, and hopefully, possibly even the Newcastle press conference on Friday. And then, obviously, as I've mentioned, I'll be at Dortmund and Paris. So this is the one Champions League group game that I'm missing, and I'm really sort of feeling that FOMO. It's really difficult to see everybody out there, but I'll be there for Dortmund and for Paris and for PSG in November. So please do continue to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you so much for all the support in the first few weeks. Only 6 weeks old, this channel now, 104 subscribers. Really appreciate all that support. Please continue with it, and I'll see you next time.